This is Gemara Baba Basra Daf Zayin, and we pick it up on the bottom of Vav Amid Beis. We are 2 lines from the bottom, and to basically point out where we're holding is that we've been discussing, as the Mishnah began, Hashutafim, partners, and the wall that separates their Rishuyos. Here on Vav Amid Beis, we begin and we segue into a similar relationship between neighbors, but here it's going to be the relationship top and bottom between neighbors. Says the Gemara, Hanu Beitrei Da'ave Diary, 2 people that are living together, and most notably, we're going to see that we're discussing brothers living in a house, in an apartment that they inherited. One is living in the top, and one is living in the bottom. Itvir tatai. The lower apartment began sinking in the ground, and then what happened is that the bottom guy didn't really have an apartment. His roof got lower and lower. He sort of had to almost crawl in. So the bottom guy told the top guy, Tav and come, let's demolish the house and let's rebuild it. The bottom guy is not able to live there, so he wants to rebuild the house. Amar Le, the top guy says, sorry, but guess what? I know Shabir called the Arna. I have no problem. I have a beautiful house, and to be quite frank with you, I don't want to spend money rebuilding a house, as my dwelling is Beseder. And of course, the question is whether or at what level the bottom guy is able to force, push, cajole the top guy into renovating the house. Says the Gemara, Amar Lei, is Tairanai Vavnayo. The bottom guy says, guess what? I'll destroy it and I'll rebuild the house. Amar, the top guy says, Leslie, it's not just the cost of the construction, says the top guy. I don't have anywhere to live. Where should I go? Amar Lei. So the bottom guy says, Ana, Oiger Lacha Duchta. I will rent you a place to live. So look how far this bottom guy is going. First, he offers to pay for all the renovations. Then he offers to pay for the rental for the top guy. Amar Le, the top guy is not appeased. I don't want to have to bother to move to a new place. I'm not interested. But the bottom guy says, but I can't live in my house. You don't want to bother. I don't have a house. Shuf. Says the top guy says, bend over on your stomach and crawl in and crawl out. Unfortunately, it's not my problem, and I am not going to move. End of story. So what is the din? Amar Rav Chama, says Rav Chama, 5 lines from the top, Zayin Amid Halef. Bedina kamakev min hadin. The top guy could be ma'akev, could hold back the bottom guy from building the house. Says only if the bottom guy's house did not reach below 10 tfachim. Aval mata keshure lemata me'asara. If the bottom apartment sinks so low that it's under 10 tfachim, then then the bottom guy could say that the area under 10 tfachim is my rishos, and I'm not giving that area to you. Meaning, your floor has sunk so low within 10 tfachim of the ground, you're now, for all intents and purposes, living in my house. So guess what? I do not let it, and therefore I am able to tell you to move and thereby reconstruct the house. If they made a tenai, then they would destroy and rebuild it. And the chiddush over here is that once it is within 10 tfachim, then he can even force him to pay for part of the demolitions. Originally, he only wanted him to move. But if he lamais goes all the way down, then he can even force him to share the expense of the construction. Says the Gemara, We just ended off. We said that if they made a Tanai with each other, then they could always force him to rebuild it. Says the Gemara of Chasibadi Adadi Ad Kama. Until how much can he prevent him? How much, does just at what level? Meaning, if it falls a little bit, he can force the top guy to rebuild it. Just because they made it Tanai, how far does that take him? Ami Rabbanan Kamei de Rabba Mishmei de Marzucha Brei de Rav Nachman. De Amar Mishmei de Rav Nachman Concise Sheshaninu. Roimoi Kechatzi Arkoi. The height should be half of the length, ukechatzi rachvai, plus half of the width. So if it's within the amount that it's not even half, that's when he can force him to reconstruct the house. Amrlu Rabba says, Rabba lava mina lacha. Did I not tell you? Lo titzli be'buki. Sariki Rav Nachman, do not hang empty pictures on Rav Nachman, meaning you got the din all wrong. Hachi Amar Rav Nachman ki didairi inchi, the amount of that is normal for one to live in. It's not a din in half of the length and half of the width, but rather if you can live normally, then you don't rebuild it. If you can't live normally, then you rebuild it. Vikama, and how much is that? Says the Gemara. What is normal? Amar Ravuna Bredi of Yeshua ki hechi da'ili isuraisa de mechuza v'hadar. The amount that you could bring in bundles from mechuza and turn around. But if it shrinks, if it settles, if the ceiling falls lower, that you can't even do that, then he can force him to rebuild the house. Says the Gemara, Gavra, a little bit of a story, about 20 lines down. First one line is Gavra, Gavra Dave Bani Ashita. There was someone who was building a wall. Behind the kave, behind the windows of the neighbor. Basically, he puts up a wall, a classical situation, and blocks all the sunlight from his neighbor's house. Amar lei, come and you're making my house black. You can't do that, Amar lei. So he says back to him, I'll close up the window, and I'll make you a new window higher than my wall. You're complaining that my wall's blocking your light. No problem. I'll close up your window and open up a new window, which is above the height of the wall. Amar lei, the guy in the house responds, Kamarsli li shitai. No, you're going to damage my house by making new windows. Amar lei, Satarna lacha li shitach aduchta de kavoy. I'll break down the wall until the place of the new window. Ubaniya na Allah, and then rebuild it. Avina lacha kaveh, make your window b'minyan alel mishitai. Then I'll make you a window in the place that's above my wall, basically saying I'm going to fully take care of it for you. Amar lei, he responds, Ashita, 1 second, where did the highlighter go? There it goes. Ashita mitato yatika muleel chadata. The neighbor says a wall that is old at the bottom and new on the top, lo kaimo, you're going to knock down half the wall, fill it in, and then rebuild me a window. Such a structure. Old bottom, new top, it's not going to last. Amar lei. So he says, okay, I'll tell you something else I'll do. About 8 lines from the white lines. First one line is Amar. Amar lei satarnu la adlar. I'll knock down the wall all the way to the ground. And then, ubanina la, and I'll rebuild it, avinu loch kavi, begava. And then I'll build you a new window. The whole wall will be new. Amar le chada ashita chada b'kulei beis atika. One new wall in an old house, lo kaima. Sounds like, it all started with the doormat, or you give a mouse a cookie. He just wants a window, and he's mamish rebuilding his whole neighbor's house. Look what happens next. Amar le, you're complaining that it's one new wall with a whole house. Guess what? Sitarna la l'kulei beisa. I'll break down your whole house, and I'll build you a new house with new windows. Amar le, Leslie, I know where to live. Amar le, agarnu chaduchta, I'll rent you a place. Amar le, loy tarechta, I don't want to be bothered. Amar Rav Chama, on the last narrow line of Zayin Amar Aleph, Bidin kama akif. He could be ma'akev him for building the window because he doesn't want him to rebuild the top of the wall, the bottom of the wall, the whole house. Says the Gemara, Hainu hach, these two statements, these two stories were the same. V'hasu lamali. Why do we need it? Explains the Gemara, Hakamash v'lan d'loy mishtamish. We learn a chiddush from here. The chiddush is lo b'tamish ela tivna beitzivi behalma. That even though the building wasn't even used to live in, it was used for storage, for straw and twigs, still, for him to have to leave the area to let his friend build such a window, he's not required to do, and rather, he's able to stop him from building such a window. Continues the Gemara on the last two words on the first Y line. Another story which is going to end with a psak of Rav Chama. Hanu beitrei achi depalgi b'hadi adadi. There were two brothers that divided an inheritance amongst themselves. Chad mate aspelida v'chad mate tarbitza. One of them got the mansion, and one of them got the tarbitza, the garden. Azol, ahudemate tarbitza, the one that got the garden, v'kabane ashita bumedis balida, and he was bent and he built a wall at the entrance of the mansion, thereby blocking all the sunlight to his brother's mansion. Amar Lei, his brother said, "Kamafalta lai, you're making my house dark." Amar Lei, b'didi kabinyana, I'm building on my property. What do you want? Amar Rav Chavma, b'din ka'amar Lei. He's right. B'din, he's allowed to say that he's allowed to build in his own property. And the reason over here why it's slightly different than previous cases, because here the guy didn't live yet in the mansion, and therefore he can't stop him from building the wall. Amar le Ravina le Ravashi, 5 lines down, Ma'ishna mehadetanya. How is this different than the following brisa? Shnei yachav shel kolku, echamen noitel sadeh, kerem, echamen noitel sadeh. One took a vineyard, one took a sadeh in the green field. Yesh loy lebala kerem, dalet amois bas sadeh. Shamanaskin cholku. What happens? The owner of the Bala Kerem, the vineyard, has a right to strip of 4 amos in the grain field. Why? Because then that's the way that they split it up. So what do we see? We see that each one is able to have extra area to work his field and to deal properly with that which he has. So the Bala Kerem gets an extra 4 amos because that's what he needs to plant and plow his vineyard. So ask the Gemara, so too the mansion guy should be able to say, I need the light. What are you doing building a walled entrance on my mansion? Amar le, responds Rav Ashi, Hasam dalul adadi. Over there in the Braisa, they assessed the two areas one against the other, and that's where they came up with such a clear division. Says the Gemara, are we dealing with fools that they just go and they split things up? Are you dealing with fools that one of them took the garden, the tarbitza, and the other one took the aspelida, the mansion? And they didn't actually split up equally? Of course not. So we should be able to block him from building the wall. Amar le, responds Rav Ashi, nehi, very good, alula dadi. They may live nikishura v'hodri de may avira le'alu lehadadi. It's true. The value of the bricks and the beams and everything else, that they split up. But the fact that he wants to make a wall to block the light, that they never discussed, and therefore he's able to build a wall, and the mansion owner cannot stop him. Says the Gemara, 1 second, V'lei malei. Why didn't he say to him, Meikara, 8 lines on the bottom, first one is Aspelida. Originally, Aspelida Bligali, you gave me an Aspelida mansion. Hashta Mashvisli, it's Rana, it's no longer a mansion. A mansion without sunlight is a dark house. Amar Rav Simi Barashi, Shema Ba'alma, Palig Li. he gave him the mansion in name, meaning it's true. It's not a functional mansion. It's true. It's a dark house. That's what he gave him. So you can't taina that he wasn't. That's not what he took. Milay Tanya. Do we now learn in a brayso? Imer beis kor afar ani meichelacha. I'm selling you a beis kor afar afal pi. She'enay ella letech is only a letech worth of grain. That's a good sale. Shloimachar loy ella shema. Dimitri base core, as long as it's called a base core, it's enough. So too over here, it's called a mansion, and therefore that's enough, even if it's blocked, even if the sunlight is blocked. Says the Gemara, 1 second, 4 lines in the bottom. Someone says in a similar vein, I'm selling you a pardes, selling you a pomegranate field, by even if there are no pomegranates, the sale is valid. The name of the pomegranate field, the mitki paradis, as long as it's called the paradis. I'm telling you a vineyard, 3 lines to the bottom. There's no grapes. So says the Gemara, it does exist. So in our case, he bought a quote-unquote mansion, even if it's not a functioning mansion. Answers the Gemara, me, Dami. I sold you the name of such an item, of the pomegranate field, of the items. Whereas are you able to say that it was on such a das, I split up the estate? What do you mean? I split it up so that I could live there like our father lived there. So you can't taina. You got a quote-unquote mansion. No, I wanted a mansion like our father had. And therefore, it's the cases are not comparable. So Amr Lei, Rav Chama responded as we turn over to Zayin Amid Beis, Mar Yenuka. Umar Kishisha, where's the highlighter? There it is. According to their reasoning, the Amar of Nachman Amar Shmuel, neither a path to the other's field, or windows, not ladders, not irrigational canals. And they warned them that their established halachas v'rava amar yesh lahen. So proves the Gemara that there is a standard, there is a norm in the division of such properties, and therefore you can't fight against that. Well, let's see the top Rashi that says Nardayu l'tamayu Rav Chama d'min Nardayu. He doesn't hold of the svara that you wanted the mansion like your father lived there, l'shem kach. That's why chilaknu. He didn't hold of that. That what it goes by that which they said, and Rav Amar Yeshlan, they will indeed get it. Continues the Gemara. There was a star of the Yisayimim in which there was a receipt produced, and the Yisayimim said that the receipt was not real. Meaning someone had the receipt that they bought a certain piece of land, etc. And the Yisayimim said no. It was mezuyaf. It was forged. Amar Rav Chama, 8 lines from the top on Zayin Amid Beis, teaches Rav Chama, cannot collect on behalf of the Yisayimim, nor can we tear it up. Bezdin usually rips up the shtar when there is a receipt. So if we have a receipt in Bezdin showing something was paid, the original shtar should be ripped up. But says Rav Chama, we have to be nervous over here. What exactly happened? And therefore, we don't rip up the shtar, nor do we destroy the receipt. Why? You can't collect because the Maisa there's a receipt. But Mikri like Karina lay, but we don't either rip it up. Why not? Chigadli Yisasmi. Tell Maisi Rayo Mara lay that when the Yisraelim get older, maybe they'll have a Rayo and they'll be able to collect such a field. So therefore, we do not rip up the original shtar. We conclude this first half of the shir. Says Rav Chama, what is the halacha in the 4 aforementioned cases? Mitavro. We paslik Rav Chavra except for this last case of the receipt. Why? Tisadi b'shakri loy mechazkinan. We will never have a chazaka. We can't say that the witnesses are liars, and therefore we have to accept the receipt. Why? And if it was a good receipt, he should have taken out the life of the father. Because says the Gemara, all points lead to the fact that it was forged. Because why did he just wake up now with this receipt? And therefore, that's going to break all the rules. And we continue with the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, one could force Livnois Beishar, an entrance way, Videl Zador Lechatzir. One could force these items to be built. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Leimer Loi Kol Chatzir Zuriyas LeBeishar. Koivin is Livnois Li'ir Chaima Udalasim Ubereach. Not all items are equal, says Rashbak, but rather, what do we yes force according to? What do we yes? No, incorrect. Says Rashbag, look like Beishar. Period. Continues the Gemara. We could yes force to build for a walled city a wall, a chayma, udulasayim, double doors, bariach, and a bar to lock the gate. Rashbag Gomer look like the chayma. Not everyone is right for a wall. How long are you in the city that you consider part of the city for taxes, etc.? Yod beis chaydesh. Kana beis tira hareu ka'anshe ha'ir miyad. But as soon as you buy something, you're immediately considered part of the city. Similar to halacha that we know by mezuzah, that the whole allowance for 30 days, whatever mezuzah is only renting. Once you buy, you're immediately considered a resident. Begins the Gemara. Zayin Amid Beis. Says the Gemara, from the Mishnah, it would seem to indicate that a Beishar, this gatehouse, is a good thing. There was a certain pious man, Eliyahu Navi regularly visit. Avid Beishar, he made an entrance, and Eliyahu stopped visiting him. So seemingly a Beishar is not a good structure if that's what caused, if that was the impetus for Eliyahu Navi not to visit him. Says the Gemara, Loi Kasha, Ha mi gavroi, ha mi beroi. When do we say it's good as mi gavoi? Was when inside the door of the courtyard, and therefore that's the problem, Ha mi vroi. But the Mishnah is talking about where it's outside, and therefore it's good. And the problem is, if you're not going to hear that Niyam coming to knock on your door, they're both outside. Hadilesli delas. He by saying a third taratov hadisli delas lokasha hadisli poiseches hadilesli poiseches. The difference is, does it have a lock? He by saying hadisli poiseches lokasha the poiseches didei migavai the poiseches didei mibaroi. The difference is, where is the lock? If Pesachas Didei is on the inside of the gatehouse, then what? Aniyim are unable to enter it up. Therefore, that's not good. Pesachas Didei mi barai. The Mishnah talking about where the gate is on the outside, and therefore the Aniyim are able to enter, and therefore it is a good thing. We continue in the first white line. Kavin I said, "Livnois beishar v'dels l'chatzer Tanya." Rashba goymer lo kol chazer zuz l'beishar el l'chatzer as v'chlosh zerabim. Royal Beishar, Vishenas Rabim, Visdani Rabim, Royal Beishar. For Rabbanan, the Rabbanan argue on the rule of Rashbag. For Rabbanan, there are times that the people of Rabim push to go in from there, and therefore a Beishar, a gatehouse, is always a potential for all types of courtyards, etc. We continue quoting the Mishnah 5 lines down. Kovin Isai, Livna Isai. Once one's a resident of a city for 30 days, we could compel him, we could force him to build the wall, etc. Tanu Rabbanan Kovin Isai laslis ir de lasayim bariach. Shbagam look al yar zuris the chayma al ir asmuch lisabar. Then if it's near the port town, Ruah L'chaim of She'ena Smucha L'Sabar, Eina Ruah L'chaim of Rabbanon. Say me the Mikri Vasi Gaisa. Say the Rabbanon, it's not just a port city. Of course, a port city, you have the additional concern of people coming to attack from sea. But say the Rabbanon, no, Zin the Mikri Vasi Gaisa, even on a not port city, sometimes the invaders, the opposing army will come, and therefore it's always to put up a border, a wall on a border. We conclude, says the Gemara, Ba'im Yinei Rav Lazar, Meirav Yochanan. The first, perhaps, real tax debate. When you collect from people in the city, do we go according to the people? How many children are there? How many members of the household? Or do we go according to the wealth of each person? And Elazar, my son, fixed nails in this din that we collect based on one's wherewithal. The closest of the houses Rav Yehuda Nisina Rama Deshura Drabanan. Rav Yehuda Nisiyam placed the burden of collecting the items on the Rabbanan. Amar Reish Lakish said Reish Lakish the Rabbanan, the Rabbanan don't need a wall b'chlal. Leman, what's the wall for? Ilim the Sadikim the Nafesh. Machla, Hashtakli Yisag Sebek, Cholashals Fasayam, Sadikim Asai, Mechol Yarbon. What do you mean? The Sadikim protect the whole world, so you think that they themselves need the protection? Alachi Kamar, Sabr Lamasim Shal Sadikim Michal, Yerba Yon Vakaval Chaimer, Oma, Chol Shamuan Magin Aliyam. Just like a little bit of sand surrounds and protects the sea, that they protect upon us. And for this, why didn't you say, Ani Chayma Vishadai Kimigdalis? Why didn't you quote the Pasik? The pasuk in Shir Shirim that says, "I'm like a wall, and my breasts are like towers." Ani Chayma Zutaira Vishadai Kimigdalis Tabav Chesam and Aleph. Eli Tamidi Chachamim. So what do we see? The Tamidi Chachamim are indeed the protection. Concludes the Gemara in the Tabel Chesam ben Aleph, or Yishlak yourself like Keter Hashrava, and Yichaymer to Knesset Israel. Shadei Kamigdal about Knesset about the Midrash. So therefore, there's no special din for Tamidi Chachamim. That's why Rish Lakish felt that we need another Mekar for that. I'll pick it up for the Tabel Chesam ben Aleph, B'siyata Dishmaya.